to the NABS Now Podcast, brought to you by the National Association of Blind Students, a proud division of the National Federation of the Blind.
Welcome to the NABS Now Podcast. April showers brings May flowers, but for many students, May is also a peak season for graduations. So for any graduates listening to this podcast right now, are you ready? Do you have a job lined up? What does your lifestyle looking like outside of campus? Do you know where your life is headed after you graduate? How about a graduate program? How about a gap year? How would you describe this transition from being a blind student to a blind professional? We are so thrilled to not only have one, but two graduates who have just navigated this transition. So get your note-taking devices out, sit back, and enjoy the show.
I am so excited to sit with our very special guest today to talk a little bit about life after college and how the transition between a student to a full-blown adult could be hard at times, but there are tactics to get through it. I am so happy to chat with our guests today, Miss Mausam Mehta and Miss Juhi Narula. Would you guys like to introduce yourself?
My name is Mausam. I graduated from the University of Virginia last May, and now I work full-time at American Express in New York City. Excited to be here.
I'm Juhi and Narula. I graduated last May as well from the University of Maryland, College Park, and I now work full-time at the Blind Industries and Services of Maryland in Baltimore.
Yes, East Coast represent. Love that.
Whoop, whoop.
So one thing that I'd love to start off with asking you guys, so you both went to university right before starting, and where was your headspace right before you graduated college? You were a senior trying to figure out, the last couple of months of being a student. What were you thinking at the time, and what maybe tools helped you develop and figure out how to go forward with this transition?
Oh, my Lord, what a good question. Juhi, do you want it or should I?
Oh, gosh, dealer's choice.
I can give my 2 cents. I'm sure that Juhi will have a loaded perspective on this one too, but
Only 2 cents, Mausam?
yeah, actually. How about we do 3 cents for today? Y'all get
Ooh,
Okay.
All right.
bougie over here. Okay.
Love that.
Yeah, so I guess firstly, I just want to say that as a senior about to graduate, I was horrified, not only because the year had gone by so quickly and I felt like the ground was kind of sliding out from under me, but also I knew where it was I was heading, but I didn't really know what that would look like. I was very fortunate to have received my full-time offer at the beginning of my last year of college. So I did already know that I was working at American Express, and I knew what team I'd be working on because it was the same one that I had worked on as an intern. So that was a source of comfort. I think what really got me was like, it's one of those situations where the more time you have to think about something, the more you tie yourself in knots over it. So I accepted my offer in November. And as I was getting through my last semester of school, I was wondering how the transition was going to be. I had never lived in a large city. I grew up in a small town called Stanton, which people in Virginia themselves had never heard of. So if that tells you something. And then, my undergraduate career had been in a pretty small city. So I didn't know, firstly, what the transition to a large city would be like. But I also didn't know how advocacy would transfer over from academia to full-time employment, because even my time as an intern, that was just a slight taste of what it would be like to work in a very large corporation. So I think with those things in mind, I felt a little uncertain, and I wasn't sure whether the tools that I had learned in high school and college, and even in my time in the NFB, would be enough to serve me well. But I think looking at it from the other direction, those tools were the support that I really needed going in. And I really tried to think about those and the mentors who had guided me along the way and really pushed me to speak up and use my voice, especially when you're in a situation where you have to add value to a company rather than beating your own PR, which is the way I kind of refer to college as. I tried to think of it that way. And as I got closer to the transition, I just reminded myself that it's a learning curve and there's going to be a lot of time to kind of work through those things.
Okay, I will try to follow that up with my, I guess, 3 cents. I was very similar. So we have some similarities, Mausam and I, in terms of that transition period. One thing that is, I think a lot of college students feel as well, is just I was done with college. It was my last semester. I had done training at LCB in between my college careers. So my last semester was right after I graduated from LCB. I got on campus and my immediate mode was, oh my God, I don't want to do classes like this. I'm just tired. I want to work. I don't want to do exams. So my headspace was very much like I am already graduated, even though I was still in it. Also, I did the whole 4.5 or 5 year route. So a lot of my friends had graduated the previous year. So a lot of that transitionary period that people typically go to when they graduate, I kind of went through before I graduated, just because the campus felt so different without everyone I knew there. So by the time May ran around and I was about to graduate, I was very ready to just be done and have a break. I was looking for a job that entire semester. So I was kind of going through the job search process. That's always fun when you're doing classes and exams, going through the interviews and figuring out what I really cared about, what I was prioritizing. Like, was I looking for passion? Was I looking for a good salary? Something to just get me by? Am I looking for a good location? All those questions kind of were coming to my head. So it was a lot of figuring out what I value and what I want in the future versus what I'm going to let fate take over. I was offered the job that I have now, maybe I think a day before my last final. So it was really, really close to when I was graduating. And I was like, oh, am I going to be one of those people who doesn't have a job when I graduate? And why do I think that's a bad thing? Like, is there a bias in my head that thinks I need to have everything set before I graduate and need to have the whole future planned completely? And then I got the job one day before my last final and I was like, oh, wow, that's actually crazy. I was expecting to have to go through that job searching process after graduating as well. It was a huge relief because I really wanted this job. It was definitely hit spot on to what my passion is. So there was a lot of excitement after graduating, looking forward to kind of entering that working world. The same uncertainties that Mausam went through, I definitely felt, kind of not knowing what that'll look like, even though you technically have the position description and what you would be doing on paper. You don't know what that vibe is going to be like, what the energy is. So there's definitely nerves going there. Tools that I used, I'm not going to call her a tool, but my mom was definitely one of the main proponents of my support system. She obviously she knows the way I think, right? She raised me. So a lot of my tendencies, my thought processes, she just knew. And so talking to her was really helpful because when I was conflicted, she'd be like, well, why don't you just do this? And I was like, oh, that's exactly what I would do. Or vice versa. If I thought I was doing something right and she's like, well, let's just talk about it. Let's hear what you have to say. And so she would go through those cognitive dissonance moments with me. So she was definitely a tool. People in my life, like professors that I really valued and worked with heavily, or friends. I said before that my friends had graduated a year before me. So I got to see them work for a year while I was gone. And it's a really crazy experience to see almost what your life is going to be like before it happens, because you relate so much to your friends, right? So when you see them working, you see yourself in their shoes. And a lot of them were just not happy with their jobs at the time. It's the first year. You're still adjusting. The learning curve that Mausam was talking about is very real. So that's kind of why the passion-driven motivation came first for me, because I saw them kind of struggling and not liking the content of what they were doing. So they really influenced my decisions and just my emotions, honestly, of what I wanted to do. So I'd say those are definitely ones beyond the job platforms and all that fun stuff.
I want to go back to such a powerful tool, because I think sometimes that source of comfort for a lot of people, looking at your parents as a role model. So let's talk about job search. And then what better tool is out there than LinkedIn? So how has it been instrumental in transitions? How did you leverage LinkedIn to maximize your job search or putting your best foot forward? We say that a lot around here at NABS Now. And that's because it really is about showcasing your work, your skills, and your accomplishments, your accolades. Talk about LinkedIn for a brief second here. Juhi, do you want to take a stab at this one?
Ooh, okay, I'll take a stab. LinkedIn was the main platform I was using. I know there's a lot of new ones now, but that tends to be kind of the base and the fundamental. I went to business school, so did Mausam actually. So they kind of teach that as your bread and butter of the way that you network, virtually, of course. But yeah, so that was really the tool I used, getting my whole profile set up. It got me to network with people and corporations that I had never met before, never researched. A lot of the features that let you kind of set up notifications and customize what you want, and then it'll, go through its own algorithm and show you job searches and availabilities that are going on. It was definitely one of the sources that showed me what positions were out there and what I really wanted to do. So yeah, it was definitely very useful. I think one of the main things that's important about it is knowing that it is an option. It does not have to be your only one in terms of just ways to network, but I think virtually and on a platform, it's a very, very helpful tool.
I think another tool that comes to my mind is Handshake, right? I know that a lot of
That's
colleges
one of the
use that.
new
Yeah.
ones.
That's
Yeah.
the
we love
university one.
Handshake.
Yeah, that one's spreading. It's trending.
To echo so many things that Juhi said, I love LinkedIn. I'm one of those people who like will bring up, oh my gosh, we should do that as a LinkedIn post, and all you hear is like groans and like I get kind of nerdy. But I think what I really love about LinkedIn is that it really helps you as like a budding professional, or even just like when you are working and not even looking for another job. It really helps you get to the core of what value you can add to a job. We both went to business school. One of those things that they hammer at you like 24/7 is like, build your personal brand, work on your resume until it's shiny. And like my resume went through so many meat grinders. I mean, like, when it comes to formatting, or even just like trying to make sure that I was putting, as Seyoon loves to say, my best foot forward, making sure the statistics stood out in the front, like all of those things are very relevant to creating a good resume. But what LinkedIn does is it takes it a step further, and you get to really showcase yourself holistically as an individual. So I love the ability to add your relevant work experience, your education. The bio is a really great way to just genuinely talk about yourself and like what your passions are. One thing that I discovered pretty late in the game, honestly, as I was going through the platform, but that I really quickly put a lot of stock into, is that LinkedIn does give you the option to earn skill badges based on quizzes. So usually these are in hard skills like SQL or data analytics or the Microsoft suite too. They have separate badges for those. If you take the little quiz they have and you score in a certain top percentile, usually it's 10 to 15, then you get a badge on your profile. And that is so important for prospective employers to see that you have those hard skills and that you've demonstrated proof of those hard skills, because inevitably that kind of stuff comes up in interviews depending on what position you're interviewing for. My role specifically, not extremely tech focused, but tech expertise is, I think they would appreciate it if you had it. And so I just thought it was awesome that I was able to use LinkedIn to showcase those parts of my experience and skill. I'd be able to make sure that the brand that I was creating most accurately illustrated who I am and what value I can bring to the table.
Oh my gosh, you both just said such amazing points. And I think the biggest point from both of your responses was this point of building a personal brand. When you're starting out your kind of new life, new journey, like the next chapter coming after college graduation, trying to figure out who you are in such a pivotal life transitioning moment is extremely essential. And it's really awesome how you utilize LinkedIn to kind of be that catalyst to really know who you are on paper and have an authentic way to go about it in these new spaces of your life that you're exploring. So thank you for those responses. Speaking of life transition, I want you to go back to maybe the day right after you graduated college, this first day of the new chapter of your life. Starting from here, what would you maybe think is parts of this new chapter that you were not prepared for? I know, Mausam, you said you moved to a whole different state in a big city. Was moving a big part of something that maybe you weren't prepared for? I know, Juhi, you said you started in a new job that was very passion driven. Was that something that like not prepared for fully? Like, how did all of these aspects of your new life, how did you kind of figure out how to best move forward?
I can take a stab at this one first. I'll give you my 5 cents or a nickel.
Oh, snap.
We're going up in value, you guys.
Hey.
So I think that, oh man, this is a huge question. I could talk for hours and hours, which nobody wants, but I think that there are so many new things that, even though, like Juhi was saying, I had seen some friends graduate before me and, I'd heard their stories. Even with a somewhat of a template to know what to expect, I didn't know what to expect. The day after I graduated, I had moved out. I was an RA at my university my last year. And so we moved out shortly after our residents moved out and after graduation. Honestly, the first couple hours of being at home back in Stanton, I was like, what am I doing? Like, what now? Like, I feel like the whole journey was spread out in front of me, but it was so scary. And I know something that comes up for me a lot that I'm sure preaching to the choir here about is like analysis paralysis, where there's just so much to do and so many decisions you have to make that you just don't know what to start with. So you don't do anything. And I felt like for me, those first couple of days were like that. I was like, I know that I have to get XYZ in order. I have to get an apartment because I don't have an apartment yet. I have to find a roommate. I have to make sure that I have a credit score. I have to make sure that my workplace has the accommodations I need. I have to make sure I understand the transportation in New York City. Oh my gosh, the list goes on and on and on, right? In hindsight's always 2020, right? You're like, all right, take it one step at a time, do what you need to first so that you can do the next thing. But I think for me, it took a bit of time to get the grease in the engine and for things to start getting going. I will say that once I had a little bit of time to reflect and to call my friends and to freak out a little bit, I was able to start looking at that list more as just something that I could take in small pieces and handling and managing and making sure that I had the things that I needed to in place. So my first big step was to start to look for a place to live in New York City. So as I began the apartment search, I mean, that in itself is a whole different conversation. But one thing that I realized immediately was that I really needed to get a good idea of what my priorities would be, even in this first step, figuring out I want to make sure that I live in a centralized location, relatively close to transportation. When you talk about NYC, we got transportation everywhere, but the thing is, how is the commute? Do I have to transfer a lot? Is it an easy commute? Do I have to walk a far ways to get to the train that I need? So all these things I was considering. On top of that, I was figuring out price. I mean, we all know rent everywhere is outrageous, but NYC rent is like out of your mind crazy, right? And so, so that was something I had to consider just as a very recent student and as somebody who hasn't even earned their first paycheck, right? I had to start thinking, okay, what is within my budget? What is something that's sustainable? I mean, what can I afford essentially? And then I think the final piece was safety. And this is something that is just, it's a tough one, right? The world is a scary place, and we have to think very strategically about how we want to create an environment for ourselves that we feel confident and safe moving around in, especially when we are very new to it. And so that was, I guess, my other apartment consideration was figuring out, okay, what does safety feel like to me and how can I fulfill that for myself? Also make sure that my family feels comfortable with me moving off to another state and another city. I guess, yeah, those were my first big steps, was trying to find an apartment. And then things come after that and they continue to compound. But I think that was the first major hurdle that I thought about.
My neck broke because I was nodding so hard to what she was saying.
Period.
She kind of covered everything I was going to say, honestly. I think your life immediately, it always is weighing options, right? Weighing choices is kind of what life is. That's what actions are and behaviors are. In college, there tends to be so many options that the weight for each one gets distributed equally almost, right? It's lower because you have 10,000 classes you can take. Well, I went to a major school. Maybe I shouldn't say 10,000, but like you have so many options of classes that you can take. And if you have a requirement and you don't take it this semester, you can take it next semester, right? There are thoughts that you're weighing options, but they don't seem as intense or magnified or significant. You're going through the motions. Do you do extracurriculars? Do you stay at home? Do you eat food? Do you study? All of those things are things that we're weighing constantly. The day I graduated, my parents got COVID. And so to put it on like that fun
No.
daily scale. They were safe. It wasn't like luckily, thank God, I was not worried about their health in the sense of like, will they make it through? So that's a very huge privilege.
Ew.
But it's always fun to be like, we were going to take a trip to Texas because none of us had been there. I was like, I want to leave for like a week. I don't want to, like, this is going to be my celebration. And then they got COVID, which is always fun. So that just puts it into perspective. Like, you think something's so big in your life and it's a milestone, which it is. But a lot of the times life will just be like, hey, you're still a human and everyone's still going through regular stuff. So it was that moment that Mausam was talking about of like, wow, I'm at a milestone moment. This is very surreal. I have so much of my now working life. It's all ahead of me, but I'm dealing with daily things that are still normal. I'm dealing with COVID. I'm dealing with, like moving out and all of those actions we've done so many times before. I will say the weighing options get so much more significant in a sense. Yeah. Where you live, like Mausam was saying, there's so many aspects and factors you're playing into it. But there's not the safety of, well, I'll be on campus, or, well, at least my roommates will be filtered through a process. Answering this questionnaire, at least my roommates will kind of be matched by that if I'm not already rooming with friends. It turns into like, okay, I also moved to a city, so it was also, transportation. I had to look up the bus system that I had never used before and figure out, okay, first of all, how do I even get to work? What line is closest to that? Talking to maybe people at my new job, which is kind of hard to do when you haven't met them officially yet. So finding people who might be in that area. Then you got a bus line. That's one thing. But then you're like, okay, if I do want to do one bus line, what are all of the apartments that meet anywhere on that bus line in the city? So you start getting into the nitty gritty, but the option and the choice that you make is so significant that you get down the rabbit hole because you feel like you're making such an important decision, and that's just with where you're living. Then there's like the financial literacy that Mausam was talking about. I was not as used to it. She said it herself, like, you're a student, so your mind is still in like, I have to pay for textbooks that are $100, like, this is ridiculous. And then you look at a rent and you're like, why does one person pay this much to live somewhere without furniture? You're like considering all of these factors that are so nonchalant and assumed in the adult world, but because you're a student, you're coming in with that new perspective of bright-eyed, bushy-tailed ignorance. You're just like, what is this situation? So not only are you weighing choices that feel uber significant to you, but you don't have the knowledge to back it up, and you're using so many other people's knowledges to try to like fill in the gaps that you might not know. So there is a lot of stress in that situation, especially if you are starting your job fairly close to after you graduate. I'm of the mindset, if you have a choice for when you can start your job, push it to like September. Like, give yourself a couple of months. We're all NFB people. National convention takes up way more than just that week. So like, give yourself time to do everything that you want to do before you start your career, and you have to start looking at like PTO and what that means for you, and you're taking vacations. Yeah, thank you for the groan. God, it's quite fun. So planning, I will also say, is a very huge thing. If you are an organized person, that's fantastic. And if you're not, that's fine. But that's something you will have to start getting used to, is your weekends will be planned months in advance, because all of your friends are in different areas, right? So when you want to meet and socialize with people, the bigger the group, the longer it takes to figure out a date where everyone can meet. So all of your weekends are kind of planned, and then you're like, okay, maybe I want to take a vacation. Do I have the PTO? If I don't have the PTO, can I risk taking a day off? Can I withstand that financial reset that it might have for you? So yeah, there are just a lot of decisions you have to weigh every time you're kind of making a choice. So it's just knowing that and getting used to that as a weight that you have, and eventually it just seems easier. But I think at the very beginning, it can be extremely overwhelming.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
Wow.
man.
I've been nodding my head over this so much too.
You guys are good at the non-verbal nods. I'm over here like, yep.
No, honestly, like, can I just say, as someone who's literally graduating next year, like, you guys are helping so much. I like have like a to-do list. I'm taking notes right now, guys. Like, of like everything. I'm like,
No
Juhi,
kidding.
Mausam, this is what they said to do. So thanks.
So we
love
are
that.
coming to the end of the show, which has been so fun. I didn't even realize. I had to catch myself. Like, are we really coming to an end of our fun conversation here? This last segment of the show, it's brand new. For something like this, I think it's only fitting. Throughout the show, you guys have made our head nod, both verbally and non-verbally. So many insights, so many tips and tricks throughout from your perspective. This segment is called Your Advice to Our Students in 90 Seconds. So I'm going to set a timer for
Ooh.
90 seconds, and then you are going to share a perspective, advice, some tips and tricks that you have learned, and then you're going to share those knowledge. A student who may be listening to our show, who is about to graduate, word of advice. A quick tip. Let's take a minute here, and
No
whoever is
pressure,
ready.
by the way.
Yep,
No
there is
pressure.
absolutely
About
no
weight
pressure.
options. Like,
You
what the hell?
pressure.
Oh, my heart is racing. Wait, who's going first? Can we kind of decide that?
Of course.
I'm not it.
Wow.
Gotta think fast, girl.
Okay. Hit me. Give me the green light.
All right, Juhi. Your
You got
90
this, girl. You got this, girl.
Your
got it.
90 seconds of advice starts now.
Okay, I'm gonna give my, I guess, $1 at this point. For when you start your job, do not fall into the trap of the imposter syndrome. I think it starts and it happens with so many people. You can be as qualified and up the wazoo and an expert in your field when you join your first job, and you still will feel that because there's so much. There's such a learning curve. There's so much assimilation that needs to happen. You're going into a new work culture. You're learning so many new things that one corporation or nonprofit does in their certain way. You do not know everything, and that's okay because no one does. Just be prepared for that emotion to come and kind of ride the wave. Know that you're capable and know that everyone needs to learn the new things that one job does. None of them do it the same, so no one knows all of it. So I'd say just be prepared for that. Come in with confidence and preparation that you will feel insecure sometimes, and that's okay.
Oh, she's a queen.
Literally
56
queen
seconds.
energy.
That was incredible.
Hey.
Oh,
Six-
Lord.
56.79 seconds.
Wow.
Oh,
Oh, she got
56.79.
You have cut
Love-
like way under. I love this.
Wow.
Love
I was pressured.
That was rich. It was content heavy. That was very rich. Thank you for that,
Yeah.
Juhi.
Beat that, Mausam.
I know. I'm wow, the pressure's on. All right. Well, here I go.
All right. You're up.
Tell me. All right. Boom. Okay. Well, I'm going to give my 90 cents because Juhi already swung us out of the park. 90 cents for 90 seconds. I would say, looking at it from the perspective of just outside your new job, do the big things first. That sounds really counterintuitive, but what I mean by that is there are a lot of things that, as just generally an adult, are boring and things you'll just have to take care of, like making sure that you have good credit and you're checking on that regularly, making sure that you know what you're putting in your 401k if you have employer sponsored benefits, making sure you have health insurance, making sure that when tax season comes around, you have all your documents in place. Oh my gosh, that sounds so boring. And it is. But the thing is, if you get well versed in these things and you knock them out and you do them, you take care of them, you don't let them just sit on your to-do list, your life will become so much easier because you've handled those things that everybody has to be responsible for no matter what. Like, there's no excuse around them. You got to do them, but you'll be so much more confident with the leisure and the fun and the actual work part if you handle these things when you can as soon as possible.
Say less.
75
Slay.
seconds.
Okay.
Oh, she hit it flat. 75.
75.24.
That's nice.
Oh, dang. 3/4, bro.
between us,
That's
we have-
beautiful.
What? We have like 45, 50 seconds of free advice. All right, Seyoon, it's on you.
Yeah, I was going to say 90 or 45 seconds begins now.
Well, I just want to thank both of you for coming on the podcast. And now we're all about sharing wealthy pieces of advice for our students. And I think it's always really fun to have students who are transitioning out of being a student, taking those student hat off and transitioning into real life, because it is real. To have those kind of perspectives have been super insightful. Yeah, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you to our special guests, Juhi, Narula, and Mausam, Mehta. This episode is hosted by Seyoon Choi and co-hosted by Manahil Jafri. NABS Now is produced by Seyoon Choi and Kinchuk Tala, with help from Zilay Liebert and Sarah Luna, out of the National Association of Blind Students Content Creation Committee. Be sure to click that subscribe button wherever you catch your podcasts for new content releasing every month. And visit us on the web at nabslink.org to find links to our social media pages and even more resources for blind students. Thanks for listening.